Hello students, I welcome you all to my Swayam course titled Comics and Graphic Novels in Indian Context. In this week, we have been discussing indigenous art in graphic novels. My earlier lecture was the part 1 series of this particular Roma Chatterjee's textbook, and this lecture is a continuation of my earlier lecture which is based on the similar book of Roma Chatterjee. Because it is a theoretical book, it requires a deeper understanding of indigenous folk art forms in India. It is because of this reason, in order to give you all a very extensive introduction about diverse kind of art forms in India and what is it that makes them exclusive, my lecture will be particularly focused on this. This is, as I said, the part 2 of my lecture on the book of Roma Chatterjee, which is titled as Speaking with Pictures. Now, continuing with my earlier lecture, we have already discussed how market forces were kind of shaping, how state interfered and helped the expansion of regional folk art forms. Now, in this particular lecture, we will be discussing how folk art is developing, what kind of forces, what kind of policies are kind of helping in the proliferation or in the expansion of folk art tradition. So, Roma Chatterjee, while discussing folk art as a collective tradition, she says, art is kind of a tradition in India, folk art especially when I am talking about. It is not just one generational or somebody teaching their neighborhood or kind of teaching the students how to draw or how to sketch, but it kind of relies upon particular motives, images and symbols which are only peculiar or which are only exclusive to that particular art. She says that art passed generationally with shared motif and stories. So, it is a story of a community, that how this community evolved, what were the struggles of a particular community. It can be tribal community, it can be any kind of any other community, any other regional community which is living in India, and the story is being shared. They all know the backdrop of the story, they all know the context of the story, and the images and symbols they tend to draw upon are kind of drawn from these particular stories. Community ownership emphasized over individual authorship. So, unlike the market art, unlike the commodified art, unlike the artificial art, which is very easily available in the markets and where you pay a particular owner, where you pay the shopkeeper for a piece of artwork that you buy, the folk art tradition requires that a community who has helped, because there are entire set of people who come together and help in the making of one particular artwork, and it may be in the form of painting, it may be in the form of designing a fabric, it can be painting a wall, it can be in the form of a wall painting. So, there are diverse forms through which folk art is practiced, and the entire community comes together in order to give totality to one particular art form. So, rather than an individual taking the responsibility whether he or she has done it, it is very important, or unlike the commodified art of the capitalized market, the credit, the acknowledgement for completing a beautiful artwork is given to the entire community. So, when you're talking about when some artists have done a piece of art on a wall who belong to Gond art community, or who belong to Patachitra, or who belong to Madhumani artists, or anybody else, it won't be said that he or she has made it. The credit will be given to entire set of creators who all have come together to make a particular. So, again and again there is an emphasis in the folk art on the community living. So, on the community living, not only in the form of giving credit and acknowledgement to the artists who are kind of making it, but also historically how this art form has been transferred to them, or it has been inculcated by the contemporary artist who had heard, who had listened, who had learned from their forefathers historically, and who were who played an indispensable role in the shaping of the art form as it exists today. Similarity in themes reflects collective ethos. So on your screen now you will see Jangan Singh's painting, which is an example of Pradhan God art, which is an example of Gond art, and it is the similar kind of art that you also see practiced in Bhimayana graphic novel. You see the kind of tiger he has drawn. It's not, there are motifs, and it is an example of folk art. The kind of patterns, the dotted patterns are very much an example of Gond art artists. It's all dotted, the entire tiger has dots, and you have a dark color filling those dots, but it's the entire image has been kind of made in the form of small dots which kind of form the shape of a tiger. Now you also have an example of Patua painting here, which is a scroll, and she is a Chitrakar, a woman Chitrakar artist holding the Patua scroll. So these are the kind of, and she would sing, being the Patua artist, if it was in the earlier form, she would sing the story which is being exhibited in the scroll. Now, this is a form of Madhubani painting, and how I can say what makes Madhubani painting exclusive is the pattern of trees. So, as I said, there is something very exclusive to all the folk art forms. Tree forms one of the most important motifs and symbols in Madhubani art form. So, it is the tree of life. It is also something which connects Madhubani artists closer to the nature. It shows their affiliation with the nature, and being the folk art form, the entire mindset, the entire thought process of folk artist is to be one with the nature. The folk art in itself is something that takes us back to the nature, rather than because all the colors, all the resources that are used in making folk art forms are in the form of natural dyes, natural colors, they are made on fabrics. So it is all about giving back to nature rather than taking from nature. So it is very sustainable form of art, all the folk art forms. Ethnographic approach in Chatterjee's work. She has done multi-sited work in workshops, fairs and exhibitions, and ethnography explores transformation through lived experience, and she goes on to collect the records. So this is also, I mean, why I'm referring to this work, because it gives you an insight into how, if you are doing a research on indigenous art forms, what kind of methodology you would adopt, which is very much different from the methodology adopted for studying a comics, or for studying, if it is not published in the, if it does not have a folk art illustrations contained in them. For folk artwork, you will have to go and approach the artists, learn their stories, learn the techniques, live with them, learn about the ways in which their motives, their symbols, why they are doing it, how much money are they able to earn out of it, how they have been helped by the state, what are the conditions, whether things have improved for them, or is it more worse than earlier times for them to be able to make livelihood from their artwork. So the folk art form requires completely different kind of methodological work, which requires more of field work in order to, if you're basing your study on indigenous art forms in comics and graphic novels, you need to take recourse to this kind of studies. So she has went on to record the lived experiences of the people who are involved in this kind of work, captures intersection of local and global artistic practice. What else is that she also throws light upon the fact that how global artwork is kind of influencing, or global demand is kind of influencing the regional artwork, which is very much situated in a small village in India. How, I mean, for example, if you see events like tsunami, if you see events like 9/11 that happened in US, you also have a scroll art. You will be surprised to know that we have a scroll Patua art based on the 9/11 incident that happened in America. Rethinking tradition and innovation. Tradition is not static. Artists are self-reflective and innovative. Challenges notions of primitive and pure folk. highlights the dynamic and evolving nature of tradition. So what Roma Chatterjee also says is that even folk art, though it is situated in the historical scenario, though it has been transferred to us or traveled from history to us, and even this art form has certain kind of changes. Even this art form also goes through the transformations, and there are watershed moments. There are kind of landmark events that go on to change how this art form is evolving and exists in the contemporary times. For example, as I was talking about miniature paintings, so I had said that, when miniature paintings were something which were very much prevalent in the Mughal era, and you see so many Mughal forms, their palaces, their queens and kings being drawn in and depicted in the miniature painting style. Then this art form was taken over by the Rajput princes and the Rajput kingdom of Rajasthan. But when India became independent, these rich patrons who used to fund the artists, who used to fund the miniature painters, they stopped getting money. They kind of didn't had that kind of funding to sponsor, to fund miniature paintings, which only remained limited to the fields of upper caste people and elite people who could only buy, who could only gift these kind of gifts in their circle. But once India became independent, and there was, the definition of a nation state with its states came into existence, these painters had to take recourse and sell their paintings in the market. As a result of it, the circle of these paintings, which was earlier limited only to elite circles, now this could be easily bought and sold in any random painting market of today by anybody who can afford to buy these paintings, which are roughly priced around from 200 to 2000. Any middle class person can think of buy miniature paintings, which was only a dream erstwhile. Highlights the dynamic and evolving nature of tradition. Vernacular modernity in folk art. Folk artists incorporate modern themes and techniques. Artistic expression transcends rigid cultural labels. Hybridity is central to current folk art practice. So even the folk artists are not static, they are dynamic. They are changing with time, they are changing their patterns, they are experimenting with their techniques, they are kind of mixing two kind of artworks together in order to produce something new, in order to produce something which is very exclusive, which is experimental, and they are also every day trying to better their art in order to meet the demands of the market, come up with something new. Because as I said, by remaining static, you are kind of already placing yourself out of this competitive market that exists today in a globalized world, where things can easily be bought and sold online without even going to the buyer themselves. So if you are asking or expecting somebody to come and buy a painting or a product or an artwork from you, you need to be exclusive in it. You need to create something different. So even the folk art forms are undergoing changes. Global events and local narratives. Leiden Pata. Patua scrolls, as I said, on 9/11 depict global events using traditional methods. So something as modern has been drawn very traditionally, which will obviously impress any kind of American tourist who would come and feel the kind of emotions, feel how sensitive this artwork has been to this particular event in history. Characters like Bush and Leiden show in mythic styles. Use of para-taxis to collapse time and space in narrative has been done in these Patua scrolls. Now, new media, with the emergence of new media, as I said, digital media has kind of given a very strong challenge for the existence of folk art forms, because these are the art forms which are radically and completely opposite to digitally produced images. Folk stories adapted to animation and graphic novels now, because they are also very popular and people are also trying to kind of broaden the market, familiarize the audience, familiarize the set of readers that they should. Also, I feel why folk art is being experimented in different kind of forms is because of the intensity, because of the depth, because of the emotions it is able to convey, which any normal drawing, if you would be drawing a motif. For example, if I am giving you an example, because everything becomes so abstract in art if I don't give you an example. For example, in the graphic novel Bhimayana, a fish is drawn inside the stomach of Bhimrao Ambedkar. This fish is taken from Gond art. It is in the form of a dotted pattern. Why is a fish drawn in the stomach of Bhimrao Ambedkar? Because in order to show the intensity of thirst, the intensity of struggle that he had to go through even to drink water, that there was a fish without water in his stomach, he was very thirsty but he was not allowed to drink from the same well. So those kind of emotions, those kind of intensity can only be brought by the folk art forms, rather than if there was a glass kept somewhere and he would have just spoken in the speech bubble saying he's very thirsty, which would not have kind of exaggerated or kind of intensified or made the viewers emotional about the state or about the struggle that he has gone through. In conclusion, Ruma Chatterjee says that these folk art forms have living and hybrid traditions. Gond and Patua art forms constantly evolve. Innovation and reflexivity are central to their survival. Chatterjee offers a new lens to study folk art in modern context. She says that it is very important for the folk art forms to continue experimenting, to be in dynamism, to be in motion, to keep moving, to keep shifting from their static art forms and try everything new, so that they continue to make their existence even in the contemporary world and also with the upcoming generations. Thank you.